Hello and welcome to this new episode. In this episode, I'm gonna go deeper into the Hikikomori phenomena from a Jungian and psychological lens, based on a documentary that I've watched, but also research and different books, but also my own personal experience as well regarding some of these aspects. Further, regarding this video, I also want to highlight that I'm gonna look at the Hikikomori phenomena from the lens of Jungian psychology, especially from the scapegoat archetype lens. And later within the video, we'll go into potential reasons why the Hikikomori individuals might be actually feeling the way they do, and what might be the underlying root cause of these issues that lead to this need for self-isolation. But yes, so in recent years, the Hikikomori phenomena has garnered increasing attention worldwide as a complex and often misunderstood form of social withdrawal. Originating in Japan, where it is estimated that hundreds of thousands of individuals have become Hikikomori, this phenomena transcends cultural boundaries and manifests in various forms across different societies. At its core, however, Hikikomori describes a state of extreme social withdrawal where individuals, typically young adults, isolate themselves from society for an extended period, sometimes years or even decades. While the specific triggers and experiences leading to Hikikomori can vary widely, there are common threads that weave through these stories, illuminating the profound emotional turmoil and psychological struggles faced by those affected. The emotional landscape of Hikikomori is often characterized by a profound sense of alienation, shame, and existential angst. These individuals grapple with feelings of inadequacy, self-doubt, and a pervasive sense of worthlessness. Many express a deep-seated fear of judgment and rejection, both from others and from themselves. The weight of societal expectations and the pressure to conform can feel suffocating, driving them further into isolation as a means of self-preservation. In response to these overwhelming emotions, Hikikomori individuals often exhibit distinct behavioral patterns that reflect their internal struggles. They may retreat to their rooms or homes, withdrawing from social interactions and avoiding contact with the outside world. Communication, if any, is often limited to online interactions or interactions with immediate family members. Daily routines often also become disrupted, with sleep disturbances, irregular eating habits, and a lack of personal hygiene commonly observed. While the term Hikikomori originated in Japan, similar patterns of social withdrawal can be observed in Western societies under different labels. For instance, in the United States and Europe, individuals may be referred to as shut-ins, hermits, or isolates. These individuals, like their counterparts in Japan, may struggle with similar feelings of alienation and disconnection from society. Individuals affected by Hikikomori often face significant social and economic pressures, such as high expectations for academic or career success, intense competition, and societal norms regarding conformity and achievement. These pressures can lead to feelings of inadequacy, failure, and shame when individuals perceive themselves as unable to meet these expectations. As a coping mechanism, they may withdraw from society to avoid further stress and judgment. Further cultural expectations and stigma surrounding mental health and social withdrawal plays a significant role in perpetuating the Hikikomori phenomena. In societies where seeking help for mental health issues is stigmatized, individuals may be reluctant to seek support or treatment for their struggles. Additionally, the stigma surrounding nonconformity and deviation from societal norms can contribute to feelings of shame and isolation among hikikomori individuals, reinforcing their self-imposed isolation. Further, personal experiences such as trauma, rejection, or bullying have also been reported as to leading towards the development of hikikomori tendencies. Individuals who have experienced such significant stressors or negative social interactions may withdraw from society as a way to protect themselves from further harm and cope with overwhelming emotions. Additionally, underlying mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, or social anxiety may predispose individuals to self-isolation and withdrawal. Further, family dynamics can also play a significant role in the development of hikikomori tendencies. Dysfunctional family structures, including conflict, abuse, or neglect, can contribute to feelings of alienation and disconnection among family members. Individuals who feel unsupported or misunderstood within their families may retreat into isolation as a way to escape interpersonal conflict or emotional distress. Within one documentary on the phenomena, link in the description, one hikikomori who had died had written things that reflect the existential angst that a scapegoat has. Same with one hikikomori that is still alive who feels unable and guilty to even ask for help from others. He called himself useless, where shame is a big factor as well. One of them even said he wished he was not born, which is very common as well regarding a scapegoat-identified individual. As such, feelings of existential angst, shame, guilt, and a pervasive sense of worthlessness are often reported by individuals who identify as hikikomori or who have experienced scapegoating in their lives. These feelings can be profoundly isolating and contribute to a sense of hopelessness and despair. Further, expressions of wishing one were not born are tragically common among individuals grappling with intense emotional pain and social withdrawal. These sentiments often stem from a profound sense of disconnection, alienation, and perceived inadequacy, exacerbated by societal pressures and internalized negative beliefs. What is important to keep in mind, though, is that these societal pressures and internalized negative beliefs are projections and assumptions made by people that do not keep in mind the lived experience of the individuals they project upon. In the case of this projection, they are, for instance, denying their own feelings of insecurity or helplessness regarding life, so they instead project this onto a group of people or an individual, who they instead try to make feel insecure, helpless, or ashamed, so they can relieve themselves of their shadow and feel better about themselves. The hikikomori individual then further may come to believe that they are indeed unworthy, misunderstood, or rejected by others, reinforcing the sense of alienation and disconnection from society. As such, I believe that the Scapegoat Complex could be one potential cause of the hikikomori phenomena and similar social withdrawal behaviors observed in other parts of the world. The Scapegoat Complex involves individuals being unfairly targeted for blame, criticism, and negative projections within familial, social, or cultural context. This experience can lead to profound feelings of guilt, shame, and alienation, ultimately contributing to a distorted sense of self and disconnection from others. And for individuals who have been scapegoated, the emotional and psychological toll can be severe, often resulting in a retreat from social interactions and a withdrawal from societal expectations and pressures. As such, the sense of being unworthy, misunderstood, or rejected by others can create a powerful barrier to forming and maintaining relationships, leading individuals to isolate themselves as a means of self-protection. And the experiences of scapegoating, rejection, and internalized guilt can then also further contribute to the development of hikikomori tendencies later in life in several ways as well. Individuals who have experienced scapegoating and rejection within their familial and social environments may develop hikikomori tendencies as a coping mechanism to protect themselves from further harm. Withdrawal from society can be seen as a way to escape interpersonal conflict, bullying, and negative projections, providing a sense of safety and security in the confines of one's own home. Where further, the internalized guilt and feelings of unworthiness experienced by individuals associated with the scapegoat archetype can contribute to a distorted self-image and low self-esteem. These individuals may perceive themselves as fundamentally flawed or undeserving of connection and belonging, leading them to withdraw from social interactions and isolate themselves from others. Where individuals who feel unable to meet societal expectations and adhere to rigid norms may withdraw from society as a way to avoid further feelings of inadequacy and failure. And further, the lack of understanding and support from family members, peers, and society at large can exacerbate feelings of isolation and alienation among individuals affected by scapegoating dynamics. As such, Hikikomori individuals may feel misunderstood and marginalized, further reinforcing their decision to withdraw from social interactions and isolate themselves from others who may not accept or understand them. Scapegoats often internalize the negative judgments and criticisms directed towards them, leading to feelings of self-blame and low self-worth. This internalization can stem from repeated experiences of rejection and marginalization by family members, peers, authority figures, or society at large. Over time, these individuals may come to believe that they are fundamentally flawed or unworthy of acceptance and belonging. In the case of Hikikomori individuals, the experience of rejection and criticism from multiple sources can exacerbate their withdrawal from social interactions and reinforce feelings of alienation. As such, they may retreat further into isolation as a way to protect themselves from the pain of rejection and the perceived threat of further criticism. Moreover, the tendency to blame oneself for external circumstances or interpersonal conflicts is also characteristics of the scapegoat archetype. Scapegoats often internalize the role of the problematic or faulty individual within their social groups, even when the root causes of them being ostracized lie outside of their control. From a Jungian perspective, this self-blame can be understood as a manifestation of the individual's identification with the collective shadow. By taking on the blame and responsibility for their social exclusion, Hikikomori individuals may unconsciously seek to maintain the illusion of harmony within their social environment, thereby perpetuating the scapegoat dynamic. And for Hikikomori individuals, this internalization of guilt and shame may stem from their perception of being a burden or source of shame to their family, friends, or broader social circles. They may believe that their withdrawal from society and struggles with social integration somehow reflect poorly on those around them, leading to feelings of guilt and self-blame. Furthermore, the belief that they are spreading something bad to others or bringing shame could further suggest a profound sense of responsibility for the perceived negative impact of their actions on their social networks. And this sense of responsibility may be rooted in their identification with the scapegoat archetype, wherein they shoulder the blame for broader social dynamics beyond their control. And in Western societies, similar patterns of social withdrawal and isolation are observed, although they may not be as extensively studied or culturally recognized as in Japan. The perversion of the scapegoat archetype, as pointed out by Sylvia Brinton Perera, is prevalent in modern contexts. Scapegoat dynamics often manifest early in life within familial or social structures, where roles are assigned based on perceived differences or vulnerabilities. The scapegoat becomes a target for blame, criticism, and negative projections, disrupting their sense of self and contributing to a distorted self-image. This extended struggle for autonomy and the cultivation of a genuine identity characterizes the scapegoat's experience. Dysfunctional family dynamics further exacerbate scapegoating, providing an outlet for family members to project unwanted traits onto the designated scapegoat, diverting attention from deeper familial issues. As such, scapegoats may be singled out due to perceived threats posed by traits such as sensitivity, nonconformity, or independence. In both familial and school settings, scapegoating often manifests as a form of bullying, where individuals are targeted based on differences in appearance, academic abilities, or other traits. And the act of scapegoating can temporarily unify a group by directing negative attention towards one individual, maintaining social dynamics at the scapegoat's expense. What the scapegoat thus experiences is a sense of guilt through a separation from the state of wholeness and a disconnection from the self. When the self is projected onto a collective or parent figure, guilt emerges from deviating from their established standards. This ever-present component intensifies when we feel unacceptable to ourselves, entangled in conflicting duties that force us into impossible situations. Conflicted between ourselves, interpersonal dynamics, and societal expectations. Further, individuals at odds with the community's aesthetic emotional norms are ostracized and rejected for not conforming to the common pattern. The identification with the scapegoat archetype tends to happen within a familial and social setting, normally within the earlier childhood experiences of the individual. As such, identification with the scapegoat role during the oral stage of ego development hampers various aspects of personal growth. Consequently, the archetypes of ego development become skewed, favoring characteristics associated with alienation, fragmentation, and passivity. And this leads to the adoption of compensatory roles such as the suffering servant and the savior. As such, instinctual energies remain uncontrolled and disjointed, lacking integration and causing apprehension. The inability of adult scapegoats, and thus also Hikikomori, to cultivate personal identity and confidence stems from early burdens imposed by parents who represent societal norms, devaluing and suppressing certain elements. In our contemporary secular culture, addressing these suppressed aspects is challenging, as there is no conscious means of purification beyond scapegoating others, thus relegating the issue to the realm of unconsciousness. Consequently, the shadow aspect is projected and operates through unconscious complexes. Families of individuals identified as scapegoats often prioritize adhering to external standards of collective morality, feeling compelled to purge themselves of perceived negativity. And this reflects a subconscious adherence to ancestral or societal pressures to conform to virtue. Such individuals struggle to differentiate between negative actions and the actors themselves. Parents and others who unconsciously engage in scapegoating are also ensnared in the complex themselves, their ego identities aligning with aspects resembling the demonic accuser and the priest within the complex. As such, their sense of identity relies heavily on external validation, leaving them oblivious to aspects of themselves that cannot conform to societal norms. And this denial of personal shadow distances them from their instincts and individuality, rendering them defensive and fragile. Consequently, their children may either overprotect them or confront their hypocrisy. Typically, parents of scapegoat-identified individuals convey an avoidance of emotional and symbolic realities, preferring to shield themselves behind roles and practicalities. Personal feelings are then also overshadowed by duties and propriety in relationships, leading to emotional neglect and a sense of being unseen and unheard. When emotional expression is permitted, it is often confined to collectively sanctioned modes. Being caught in the scapegoat complex affects perception and consciousness, that is, how one sees and forms experience. The ability to contain and endure suffering, one's capacity for self-assertion, and the capacity for need gratification. When it now comes to childhood experiences, early sensory experiences play a fundamental role in shaping perceptual patterns, particularly through the awakening of the senses within the range of manageable stimuli. Individuals who experience heightened sensitivity due to parental demands or inherent nature may perceive both pain and pleasure intensely. Without suitable human mediation of these experiences, they often remain fixated at early stages of perception, characterized by magical thinking and heightened intensity. Consequently, such individuals may appear unconventional or out of place in their surroundings. Often, parents perceive them as unsettling observers of shadowy truths best left unseen, akin to the child who exposed the emperor's non-existent attire. Their ability to perceive beyond surface appearances may discomfort others, leading to dismissal or denial of their perceptions. Consequently, they may be subjected to shame and rejection, reflecting the discomfort they evoke in those they see through. Through this, those associated with the scapegoat archetype identify themselves as carriers of perceived evil or wrong behaviors and attitudes that disrupt relationships and displease parental figures. Within the unconscious, on a matriarchal level, they internalize such negative labels as wrong, evil, alien, or bad. And the rejection is rooted not in the child's actions, but in their perceived difference, making them threatening and hateful in the eyes of others. As such, the individual experiencing rejection interprets it as a punishment for merely existing. This results in a burden of guilt, feelings of inferiority, and a constant existential anxiety stemming from a lack of connection to the greater whole. This underlying guilt is directed towards the self and is projected onto the rejecting party. Those aligned with the scapegoat archetype also carry a personal guilt as a form of compensation for their identification with the archetype, manifesting as a sense of uneasy fraudulence. Like their entire existence is some sort of fraud, where the inner child aspect of the psyche, unable to meet collective ideals and deemed unpardonable, harbors a deep sense of unworthiness to live. The inner child being the vulnerable and authentic aspect of the self. The inner child is often associated with both the positive and negative aspect of one's early experiences. On the positive side, it embodies the innocence, curiosity, creativity, and joy that are typically present in children. These qualities can serve as a source of inspiration, spontaneity, and a reminder of the authentic, unburdened self. Conversely, the inner child can also encapsulate unresolved issues, wounds, and traumas from childhood. Negative experiences such as neglect, abandonment, criticism, or any form of mistreatment may create emotional scars that persist into adulthood. The inner child may hold on to these wounds, influencing self-esteem, relationships, and overall well-being. And this experience leads to a deep feeling of guilt. So instead of establishing connections with others within the world or the forces within the unconscious, the rejected inner child persists in a dead, chronically regressed, unintegrated, and fragmented state, where these lost aspects can try to find expression through the pull of the fairy archetype, which can lead to escapism into fantasy as a way to deal with the inner state of being. Think also anime as such a potential way of escapism. The fairy archetype in a deeper sense is connected to nature and with it to instinct. But despite a secret yearning for renewal and rebirth, this possibility is often split off. Personally, this type of experience from my past for me was depicted in a shamanic journey as a child trapped in an underworld ash desert within a dark cavern marked by scratch marks and condemned to consuming ash. This inner child aspect, unable to assert its dependency needs or power without incurring guilt, lives as if it were an infant before facing the challenges of life. Another aspect emerges as the wanderer, burdened with collective guilt and chosen as the carrier of shadow impulses. In this aspect reflects the part of the individual that carries shadows. In the modern complex, the accuser aspect, acting as an inner critic, assumes the role of a condemning judge that demands absolute perfection and adherence to rigid norms. And this inner judge refuses to accept or acknowledge any impulse, creating thus a sort of rigid concrete block on desires which are repressed and seen as bad. Frequently, this aspect remains detached from awareness, concealed close to the inner child seeking acceptance. And the accuser aspect, resembling a harsh puritanical figure in its more extreme form, opposes the fulfillment of any need beyond basic survival, including dependency. It labels such needs as selfish, needy, weak, and shameful, or classifies them as gluttonous behaviors that must not be acknowledged. Or it can also just put a block on more specific impulses based on the individual early experiences. And the suppressed assertive and sexual energies, along with unmet needs, surface impulsively, causing feelings of guilt when not entirely rejected. This often triggers a significant resurgence of the inner critic, prompting the continuous adaptation of a persona duty-bound to carry these aspects stoically. One research paper's findings also suggested that the Hikikomori phenomena may have the aspect of coping behaviors to satisfy one's desire for dependence. Further, it stated that if a person suppresses their feelings and controls emotional expression too much, they may easily get exhausted, especially when they can only express their anger and aggression indirectly or implicitly. As such, their social interaction may become filled with frustration. Difficulty in making the shift from primitive dependence and attachment on significant others may further also lead to avoiding hardship in social interaction and prolonging the period of Hikikomori condition, which aligns with the repression of assertive energies and dependency needs in the scapegoat-identified individual. Plus, the findings from research aligns with what Jungian analysts have written about the scapegoat-identified individual as well, making me believe that it might be the same phenomena but called differently, one focused on the symptoms and the others from a depth psychological lens. As such, the symptoms and the phenomena might be actually just that, symptoms of an actual inner psychological phenomena linked to the scapegoat identified state. And with that, if we link that back to the inner child and it being locked up, and also, think about that regarding the inner critic and these various components of the scapegoat complex, we can start to see why the individual would feel the way that they do because of the experiences within childhood. As I said, the inner child feels unable to meet collective ideals and deemed unpardonable, and harbors a deep sense of unworthiness to live. And that's right there, the unable to meet collective ideals, and that also ties into things such as having a job, being able to cope with the demands of life itself. Because really what happened with regards to this is that ego consciousness has not been fully well developed. And with that, what is going on is that they're trapped in a double bind. Externally, they're being pressured into doing something that they're unable to do due to the inner psychological state, deeper within the unconscious regarding the inner child. And because of these aspects being cut off, they cannot move further with regards to the development of their self-identity. And as such are stuck in that. So they're unable to fulfill that because of the inner conflict and the inner psychological dynamics that are going on, which are not to blame for, But at the same time, the external expectations kind of keep reinforcing that situation. So then they, end up eventually identifying with the wanderer aspect. And the wanderer aspect is the aspect that's the outcast that lives outside of the constraints of society. Within society, we're not part of it. But further, this alienated and duty-bound persona serves as a defense mechanism for the inner child, ever feeling guilty to serve the collective as scapegoat. They're often being people-pleasing dynamics present, where they take on the burdens of others, or submit themselves to becoming the carriers of others' shadows. And this ensures that the inner child will be kept safely on ice to ensure its living, albeit in hiding. In this latter part, when there is an identification with this inner child aspect, can cause such hiding behaviors. Where to scapegoat-identified individuals, the wilderness is an image expressing their existential experience of profound alienation and exile. It is the world of their own perceived reality that encompasses them, for they feel anomalous outside the collective borders beyond acceptance. And without a supportive internal figure, they are cut off from transpersonal and collective sustenance unless they are temporarily identified with an acceptable persona role. Psychologically, for these individuals, the wilderness is analogous to their sense of paralyzed apathy, meaninglessness, and abandonment panic. And it mirrors the pain of their never belonging, of homelessness, of living in hiding. They, from what Perera wrote, feel seen when this is interpreted as a sense of living in hell or in the underworld all their life, for they have experienced no internal safety and no outer holding. And as such, they are filled with the craving to belong to a stable, predictable, containing reality where a modicum of ego control and invulnerability would protect their sense of self from the onslaughts of unmediated transpersonal energies. Instead, they live within an omnipresent sense of danger and an awareness of the shadow that others around them do not wish to see. They may even long for death as an end to their sense of exile, or have a strong sense they should never have been born. Such a state, according to Perera in her book on the Scapegoat Complex, was expressed by one woman she had analyzed. When she was no longer able to function by means of her competent but brittle scientist persona, she withdrew, staying in bed, crying that nothing had ever made sense, that she hated life and wanted to be cared for, that she had to be the savior for her unhappy family. Further being noted that sleeping disturbances and insomnia are also common symptoms as well. Further, initially in scapegoat-identified individuals, dependency and hence demandingness is split off, often connected to the victim child. This may manifest as a childlike demand that one take over ego functions for the person. One also can see this behavior represented in people that want an older couple or other person to act as a parental figure. One example from Perera's book would be the following. "You have to do it for me," threatened one young man, "otherwise I'll have to kill myself." And this individual was confronted with the need to find a job to support himself and realized he was unable even to use the telephone. Where later in therapy, the young man began to argue, "I want to take care of myself, I want someone else to do it for me." And Perera here noted that such stubbornness is already in advance, revealing a flowing of libido and a nascent capacity to demand assertively. And what should be noted also is that the process can get stuck here for a long time, while the individual tests this newfound potency and tolerance of the therapist onto whom is projected the accepting self. And in the process of healing, the ego must become active and responsible, even heroic in pursuit of its needs. As such, the demands of the hidden self-child need to be patiently supported and endured until the person's process suggests that the time has arrived for self-discipline of the unleashed impulses. Regarding the shadow content and projected negative aspects carried by the scapegoat-identified individual, well, when it comes to Japan, the Great Purification Ritual, known for its purifying and cleansing aspects, could potentially offer psychological and spiritual benefits to individuals struggling with issues like the Hikikomori phenomena. The ritual is traditionally performed to remove impurities, both physical and spiritual, and restore harmony and balance. In the context of individuals grappling with deep-seated psychological challenges, such as those associated with the Scapegoat Complex or other forms of emotional and spiritual distress, participating in rituals like the Great Ohare could provide a sense of catharsis, release, and renewal. By engaging in symbolic acts of purification and offering prayers to the kami, spirits or deities, participants may find a sense of connection, meaning, and healing. The act of returning kegare, impurity, to the kami aligns with the symbolic process of acknowledging and releasing burdens, guilt, or negative energies that individuals may carry within themselves. And in the case of Japanese mythology, stories like that of Susanoo and rituals like the Great Ohara could be interpreted as symbolic responses to issues of conflict, ostracism, and the restoration of social harmony. And in that sense, mythical narratives often serve as allegorical representations of human experiences and societal dynamics, offering insights into the cultural values, beliefs, and coping mechanisms of a given society. As such, by framing these challenges within the context of mythological narratives and ritual practices, ancient cultures may have sought to provide explanations for the causes of social discord, offering models for reconciliation and redemption, and reinforce collective identity and cohesion. So while the specific terminology and psychological frameworks may differ from contemporary understandings, the underlying themes and objectives of these cultural traditions may resonate with modern concepts like the Scapegoat Complex. Further, for those interested in a more Indo-European, ancient pagan ritualistic manner of dealing with the complex, I offer insight into this in my book Alchemy of the Psyche, out now. My book also goes deeper into the Choreos and Arctea ritual that helps with cultivating assertiveness next to reconnecting the person with instinct, where the sovereignty goddess also plays a key role in overcoming the scapegoat role. I hope in the end that this video can shed some light on the phenomena and its psychological aspects. If you are interested in how to overcome this, either check out my book Alchemy of the Psyche, Perera's book, or my extensive video on soul loss and retrieval. Both my book and video are also born out of my own healing journey regarding overcoming the scapegoat identified state and through the Choreos rituals regaining my sense of self. So in that sense, a lot of these things that I've been talking about, or like I said way in the beginning, born out of both my own experiences, but also copious amount of research and self-analysis next to doing these Choreos rituals myself. And with that said, thank you for watching, and maybe see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.
Αίδε μου σαν μη φιλή, μολπής δε μης κατάρχου, αυρίδε σον απάλσεων, εμάς φρενάς δονήτων.